My role or involvement in building Stratford Park actually began 2-3 years before we were needing to expand. The building we were in on Prospect in Washington was too small. The congregation was growing, and so the first thought was that we would probably start a new work over in Urbana. So a group of men and women got together each Sunday morning for probably a year beforehand and prayed about, where the work would be and who would go and so forth. There was really no thought of just relocating the present work. And the longer we got together and prayed about it, it seemed that the more the Lord was leading to just relocating Prospect Avenue Chapel somewhere. And so that's how this idea came about. The Lord seemed to lead in that direction. And graciously, He provided a buyer for the building there, which was the Salvation Army, bought our building, and they were willing to let us stay in it as long as we needed to till we could get the new one built. So with the funds from them, we bought this property and began building, I'm thinking either late 1965 or early 1966. And the first meeting here was held on Easter Sunday of 1967. I guess I would have been in my late 20s at the time, married, 3 children, two children at the time. And one of the young bucks that wanted to be involved in a lot of the work. So I guess the first thing I did was Clark Krutzinger was kind of the work foreman. And so I came out on work day and he said, "What do you want to do? You want to shovel or you want to drive a truck?" I said, "Well, I'd rather drive a truck." Sounded easier. Well, it turned out that's a wheelbarrow. And they loaded it full. So that was not an easy task either. But we took it, we saw it go from just a cornfield to this nice building that's been put up. And again, Clark Krutzinger was kind of the project supervisor as far as work detail. Edgar Hildebrand was the man that was project foreman as far as planning and oversight and so on. He's one of the elders. He was at that time probably in his 60s, I'm guessing. And so he and Frank Faulkner and Bob Faulkner and Don Batstone and Al Jensen were kind of the key men at the time. They were elders in the assembly, and there's some young fellows, I guess at that age you can call me young, but Bob Jordan and myself and Larry Crabb was here at the time, and Irv Schrock, Ross Brower was here, and Jim Dixon, and so there's probably others that I'm missing, but anyway, we all pitched in, and they hired crews to do it, but we did a lot of the drywall and the painting and the whatever work that rookies could do. So. Oh, how many people were involved in all the different aspects of the building? Probably off and on 50 or more, I would guess, in different aspects. Even the young people. Edgar Hildebrand had a grandson, and Bob Faulkner had a son, and they were out here, doing whatever they could. So there's a lot of help off and on at different times. Edgar took time off from his job, took a leave of absence for a year to foreman the job. And Clark was here day and night, every hour that he possibly could. Even slept out here at times during the winter to make sure the plumbing didn't get froze or freeze up and so on. So he put in a ton of work. So his imprint is all over the building.
It's Mr. President?
Yeah, Clark Cutzinger, huh? Yeah.
I'm talking to him later on this week, so I'll have to ask him about that.
Yeah.
Cold nights, I'm sure. So, in what ways have you seen God bless this chapel, this community, or this body, this church?
Yeah, God has blessed this work in a multitude of ways, but one of the greatest probably is the reach of the chapel is now worldwide. Back in the 50s, 60s, I'm not sure when Chanute Air Force Base closed in Rantoul, but prior to its closing, we would get servicemen that would attend the church also. One of them was a Major McComb that flew with the Air Force, wouldn't be called Blue Angels, that was Navy, but whatever the Air Force unit was. And he would bring a lot of other people down from Chanute. And the same with the university. So people would come and go. They would spend a few years here. You've seen that in your time at the chapel. So we have people all over the world that have been touched by the work here. Missionaries all over the world. So even though it's a local work, it's also a worldwide work. Back in I believe it was the late 80s, we had prophecy conferences for, I think, a 2-week period each time, and there were 5 churches involved and 5 ministers, and each minister would speak each preacher at one of the different churches each evening. So they did that on a rotating basis, so we had some of the best preaching in the world available to us. That's men like J. Vernon McGee and Bill McDonald and Bill McRae. I think it was Dave Hockett. Not sure about the first name, but Hockett was the last name. And, can't remember all of them, but tremendous teaching, and it was an outreach to the community. We not only filled this auditorium, but we set up remote down in the gymnasium for overflow and so forth. And many people began over the years coming to the chapel because of those prophecy conferences. So.
I used to listen to J. Vernon McGee. He's still on the radio. His voice is still on the radio through the Bible series. And that's the way he planned it, so long after he passed.
Yeah. Yes, he was an interesting guy.
Oklahoma, right? He was from Oklahoma, I think.
I think he ended up in California, I believe.
Yeah, I knew he ended up in California. That's
Yeah.
where he was born in, Stillwater, Oklahoma.
So can you believe going out for coffee with J. Vernon McGee? I got to do that.
No kidding.
Yes.
Wow. I bet he was a really cool guy. I bet he was a neat guy.
Yeah. So after each evening meeting, there'd be a few of us. I think Al Jensen and Bob Jordan and I'm not sure who all, would go out for coffee at a place called Lendale's with the speaker, and that's when you really get to know them a little bit from the inside. Yeah.
Just an off-the-cuff question. Back in those days, in the 60s, the early days of Stratford Park, what did you guys do after church? Did you guys go to, was there a favorite lunch place that you guys used to go to around here or something that's not here anymore?
No, going out to lunch. What do we do after church each Sunday? Going out to lunch is a rather recent thing. Back in those days, one of the key things that we were taught as young couples growing up was the art of entertaining. And so probably 6 to 8 families every Sunday were entertaining visitors or guests or whatever in their homes for dinner. Again, Bob and Helen Faulkner and Al and Margaret Jensen were the key trainers in that. But we sure got involved, and Sharon and I, and Bob and Pat Jordan, and I'm not sure who all, but that's where you really get to know people, is when you sit down over the dinner table and eat with them and just talk with them. So that was part of the training. And many times we were kind of unfair to our wives. Many times we didn't know how many were coming. She didn't know how many to prepare for. Who's coming? I don't know. How many? I don't know. Well, get ready for 10 and we'll see what happens. So those were good days, wonderful days. And we had used to have the mass choir come and sing. They would come, and I don't know how many in the choir, maybe 50 or probably more, but they would come for the evening, and then they would split up into stay in different homes. So we entertained overnight guests that way, as well as overnight speakers and things of that nature. That's where the growth happens. That's where you really see the Lord in action.
In those times of battle.
Yeah, I think so. I think probably your in-laws did a lot of entertaining once they came here also. Gary and Carolyn Eden.
They still do.
They did a tremendous job with that. And I know Jim and Lydia Dixon did also.
Tell me what does Stratford Park mean to you? You've been here too? Yeah, that's my question. What does Stratford Park mean? What does Stratford Park mean?
How long have I been at Stratford Park Bible Chapel?
That's what I was going to ask you. Yeah.
Well, I've been at Stratford Park since it started, but the original group started back, I believe, in the 30s, and it met at, I think they called it the Old Tabernacle or something that's on the corner of State and Church Street. And that building eventually got inhabitable. So they temporarily, going into World War II, they met at Knights of Pythias Hall down on Neal Street. And then when the war was over, they were able to build there on Prospect in Washington. I think that was in 48 that they opened there. And then moved out here in 67. And I forgot your question.
Just,
What's it mean to me? When we moved here, I was 11 years old. Possibly was a believer, but I don't know that I even knew for sure what that meant, although my mom made sure we all went to church as long as I can remember. But it's where we really got the first training and biblical training. The churches we had attended were not as strong doctrinally as the chapel was. So we got not only biblical training, learned the Bible itself, as well as knowing the Savior for the Bible, and learned how to function as a believer, what it meant in your daily life. That it's not just a Sunday only thing, but it's every day of the week choice that you make to serve Him. So it becomes the basis for everything you do. It's the basis for the one you choose to be your wife. It's the basis for how you raise your children. It's the basis for how you do your job at work. It's the foundation that the chapel provided in the scriptures provides the whole basis for life, how you're going to live.
Great. That's one of my favorite questions, is just kind of what the chapel means to these two days. I think it's, even though the scriptures don't change, the chapel means to people does over the years. You know, I think when I first started coming to chapel, it was just a church. You know, it was just kind of another church, and that's what it is. But then over the years, it's become a lot more than that. So it's great. All right, it's become family. That's where I met my wife, and you know. And,
Kind of a foundation in it.
yes, sir. I think, well, I guess my last question is how has God used the ministry of Stratford Park in your life and in your family? You already answered that a little bit.
Yeah, how do I expand on that? How has the chapel, how has God used the chapel to influence or increase my spirituality in life? Well, I started out, as I say, as 11 years old. I was highly involved in the youth work, both as being part of the youth group and then eventually being a leader in the youth group. I taught Sunday school class. I was an elder for several years. Well, a deacon before that, and then an elder, and then retired from that. But it holds you accountable, not in a legalistic way, but all of your friends, all of your life is centered around the chapel. When I can recall in high school, I didn't have too many friends just from high school. All of my friends in high school were from church, both this church and the one we'd attended prior to that, and they still are. So it really has formed I guess the content of my life. And it's still true today. My closest friends are here at Stratford Park Bible Chapel, or had been at one time. I've got tremendously good friends all over the country. In one sense, all over the world. In Spain and in Germany. Had some in the Philippines, Canada, Brazil, all over because they came through here and we got to know them. So it's going to be quite a reunion when we get to glory. People from all over the world will come up and say, "Hi, John, remember when?" And so we had some really good fellowship. All because of the way the Lord has blessed and used the church in my life, yeah.
I think that's all I have. Anything else that you want to say or add?
Yeah, there's so many people that were so key in my life. Frank and Fern Faulkner were, in a way, just they were older, they were a role model, but their sons, Bob and John, and Bob's wife Helen and John's wife Mary, became real strong influences in my life during my teen years and early 20s. Al and Margaret Jensen came along about 1954, and they fit right in where Bob and Helen. Bob was a spiritual mentor. Al and Margaret were kind of marital trainees or mentors. They set the example and set me straight when I was off course. Margaret had a really nice way of doing that with a smile, but she got her point across well. And that's been true of so many people through the years. We still have a few people left from 50 years ago when this building opened up. Ross and Carolyn Brower, Clark and Eula Krutzinger, Carl and Wanda Paquet, Barb Schrock, Jim and Lydia Dixon, my sister Fran. I'm probably missing somebody, but anyway.
The Rices there?
The Rices were here in the early 50s. They married the last day of 1957, and moved to Idaho. Then they came back in 74. So when they left, we were at the old chapel. When they came back, we're at the new one. So we don't let them claim to be part of the new work here. That's my sister and her husband. So anyway, yeah, we've got a lot of good chapel people in glory, and looking forward to getting there to be with them. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir. This was great.
Well, we wish the work to continue and to be blessed to the Lord.